금요일날 새벽 4시 10분이 지나고 있습니다. 이 시간 제가 어제 목요일날 뉴욕타임즈를 관심 있는 분야를 읽어서 올립니다. April 25th, 2024, World. They risk Death River to dodge the draft. Help crossing the border can now cost as much as $10,000. In Ukraine, thousands try to swim or run across a border to avoid the war. The roiling water. Can be treacherous. The banks are steep and slick with mud, and the riverbed is covered in jagged, hidden boulders. Yet Ukraine border guard often find their quarry when seeking to escape the military draft. Swimming in these hazardous conditions, trying to cross the Tisa River, where it forms the border with Romania. In one video, a man standing in the swirling water yells for help. The guards yell back, "Don't sleep, hold on." But he lost his grip and was swept away before rescuer could reach him. Nobody was found, the official said. The man apparently had tried to avoid the risk of dying in the war, but he died anyway in the river, Lieutenant F. said. Of draft dodgers, she said, they see the river as their chance to live because so many soldiers die on the front line. Many U.S. homeowners are clinging to lower mortgage rate. Something deeply unusual has happened in the American housing market over the last 2 years, as mortgage rates have risen to around 7%. Rates that high are not, by themselves, historically remarkable. The trouble is that the average American household with a mortgage is sitting on a fixed rate that's a whopping 3 points lower. The gap that has jumped open between these two lines has created a nationwide lock-in effect, paralyzing people in homes they may wish to live on a scale not seen in decades. For homeowners not looking to move anytime soon, the low rates they secured during the pandemic will benefit them for years to come. but for many others, those rates have become a complication, disrupting both household decisions and the housing market as a whole. Indeed, according to new research from economists at the Federal Housing Finance Agency, this lock-in effect is responsible for about 1.3 million fewer home sales in America during the run-up in rate from the spring of 2022 through the end of 2023. That's a startling number in a nation where around 5 million homes sell annually in more normal times, most of those to people who already own. These locked-in households have been relocated for better jobs or higher pay and haven't been able to downsize or acquire more space. They also haven't opened up homes for first-time buyers, and that's driven up prices and gummed up the market. President Biden has made note of how unsettling this may feel to many people. In his State of the Union address last month, he spoke directly to anyone fretting about interest rate. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rate will come down as well, he said. But while many Americans wait, he proposed temporary tax credits was up to $10,000 for the new buyers and the owners who sell to them. For first-time buyer, doing the psychologically fraught mortgage math at home, the White House pointed out that for the median-priced home, this is equivalent to reducing rate by more than 1.5 percentage point for 2 years. For the homeowners who've so far been unwilling to sell, however, that sum is a good deal, less than the $50,000 that locked-in rates are effectively worth the typical person with a mortgage. Average fixed mortgage rates on new home loans now far surpass rates locked in by Americans with existing mortgages. Rates on new loans, existing mortgages. You could think of your locked-in rates as an asset that you own, said Ted J., a professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. But that shifted significantly in the last 2 years as the Fed battled inflation and as the interest rate on all kinds of loans spiked. How crypto exec ended up in Nigerian prison. Binance compliance officer was detained on charges of tax evasion and laundering. Binance is trying to rebuild after settling charges that it violated economic sanctions against Syria, Cuba, and Iran. The Binance delegation asked how it could resolve the government's concern. When he flew to Nigeria for a business trip in late February, Tigran, a top compliance officer at the cryptocurrency exchange Binance, packed a small suitcase with just enough clothes for 2 days. Now, Mr. Gambaren is being held at Kuje prison in the Nigerian capital of Abuja, a complex that has housed Islamic State military and Boko Haram fighters. A former U.S. law enforcement agent, Mr. G, knew the trip was risky. Only a few weeks earlier, he and a group of colleagues had rushed out of Nigeria, concerned that the local authorities might detain them. 5 people familiar with that trip said. This time he assured his wife he would get in and get out. The Chinese site rewiring online shopping. Pinduoduo's main appeal is its shockingly low prices as people reduce the spending. Pinduoduo is the sister company of Temu, the bargain shopping app that has amassed tens of millions of users outside China. Separating TikTok from ByteDance is likely to be messy. A bill that would force a sale of TikTok by its Chinese owner, ByteDance, or ban it outright, has been passed by the U.S. Senate and is expected to be signed quickly into law by President Biden. Now the process is likely to get even more complicated. Congress passed the measure citing national security concerns because of TikTok's Chinese ties. Both lawmakers and security experts have said there are risks that the Chinese government could lean on ByteDance for access to sensitive data belonging to its 170 million U.S. users or to spread propaganda. The proposed law would allow TikTok to continue to operate in the United States if ByteDance sold it within 270 days, or about 9 months, a time frame that the president could extend to a year. Small buyer pool. Analysts estimate that the price for the U.S. portion of TikTok could be tens of billions of dollars. ByteDance itself is one of the world's most valuable startups, with an estimated worth of $225 billion, according to CB Insight, a firm that tracks venture capital and startups. The steep price tag would limit the list of who could afford TikTok. Tech giants like Meta or Google would probably be blocked from an acquisition because of antitrust concerns. A complicated divestment. Even if TikTok approach a sale, the process of separating TikTok from ByteDance is likely to be messy. China's unpredictable role. The Chinese government could also try to block a TikTok sale. It is not a foregone conclusion by any means that China will allow a sale, said L., a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund, who specializes in emerging tech in China. January 6, rioters should not catch a break. Will the U.S. Supreme Court create the ambiguity where none exists? Imagine that during a U.S. Supreme Court argument, protesters angry about the case stormed the court building. The mob breaks doors and windows and assault security officers while forcing its way into the chamber. Some shout that they want to hang the Chief Justice. The justice and the attorneys are forced to flee for their lives. In several hours before law enforcement secures the building and the argument can resume. Has the court proceeding been obstructed or impeded? That doesn't seem like a difficult question, but that's essentially what the Supreme Court heard debated in argument last week in Fisher versus United States, a case challenging a law being used to prosecute hundreds of people, including Donald Trump, for the events of January 6, 2021. Such disruptive ruling is possible only if the court goes out of its way to disregard statutory languages and create the ambiguity where none exists. If the Supreme Court stays true to its textualist the principle, this is an easy case. a picture of the economy on the second Trump term. Much would depend on Congress and the cabinet, but financial forecasters aren't optimistic, speculating about how the economy would perform under a second Donald Trump presidency normalized the candidacy of a deeply flawed human being. But we'll all have to live in Mr. Trump's world if he is elected. So it seems important to talk about the economic outlook under another Trump term. I recently talked to several of Mr. Trump's economic advisors. They told me that the Trump 2.0 administration would be a lot like the Trump 1.0 administration, except they hope a more disciplined and more effective. Mr. Trump had said he wants to extend in full the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, parts of which are set to expire at the end of 2025. The act slashed the corporate income tax to 21% from 35% and lowered personal rates. He hadn't said much about how he would offset the revenue cuts with the spending cuts, aside from trying to repeal the clean energy spending. In the Inflation Reduction Act, which wouldn't do the trick. Similarly, Oxford Economics, a British-based forecaster, predicted this month that under limited Trump scenario, in which his agenda would be constrained by Congress, economic challenges, and costs, inflation would be slightly higher, but gross domestic product adjusted for inflation would be slightly higher as well. Under full-blown Trump's scenario, in which the president got everything he wanted, inflation would be even higher, and the gross domestic product adjusted for inflation would be as much as 1.8% lower relative to our baseline, Oxford said. I agree with Mr. Moore that if you liked how Mr. Trump ran the economy the first time, you'll probably like it again. In a way, though, the details are secondary. That we've even having this conversation not much more than 3 years after January 6th, 2021 is already a huge victory for Mr. Trump. In 2016, the stock market soared after Mr. Trump was elected after a post-night hiccup, as investors got excited about the potential for tax cuts and deregulation. The reaction was strong partly because his victory was unexpected. If he wins again, investors will be less surprised, and the reaction could be less positive. Investors may conclude that the Federal Reserve will keep interest high to offset overly stimulative Trump policies. Ukraine aid in the light of history. What about the claims that America is bearing too much of the burden? Last week, Donald Trump accused Europe of failing to pay its share. Why is it that the United States is over $100 billion into the Ukraine war, more than Europe, and we have an ocean between us in separation? Why can't Europe equalize or match the money put in by the United States of America in order to help a country in desperate need? Will this change? Europe is moving toward increased military capacity, but more slowly than it should, and American aid remains essential. So, as I said, I'm relieved that America has finally released essential aid, but still very worried about the future. For now, at least, U.S. support remains crucial to Ukraine's survival. To be visibly Jewish in the Ivy League, what should students do when faced with hostility from peers and professors? But as the experience of scores of other Jewish students on American campuses testify, we are well past the fine stage. It hasn't worked out that way. What do such acts mean for Jews on campus? There's a certain eagerness in some media stories to highlight Jewish students who have joined the protest as a way of acquitting anti-Israel groups of charges of anti-Semitism. C&T's defiance commends them. As for the student bigots who have put them through these ordeals, and the university administrators who have dallied and equivocated in the face of that bigotry, history will eventually render a verdict. Donors, alumni, and prospective students should reach their own verdict sooner. There's no escaping it. I entered Yale extremely proud to be one of the first Hasidic Jews to go as an undergraduate. She said, I looked forward to sharing experiences with students from diverse backgrounds while living proudly in my own skin. What I find now, working around the campus, is people flipping me up, yelling at me. There's no escaping it. I asked C&T if they had given thought to leaving Yale. I have to stay. T told me she felt similarly. I'm going to stay around Yale to support my peers as long as I needed to, he said, but he also had regrets. What goes for the student demonstrators is true of faculties too. At Columbia, nearly 170 professors put their names on a statement suggesting that one could regard October 7th as an occupied people exercising a right to resist violent and illegal occupation, leaving aside the lowery language. There's little question as to where the sympathies of the signatories lie. What are Jewish students, including the Israelis enrolled at Columbia, supposed to do when faced with such military hostility, not only from their peers, but also from their professors? A planetary crisis awaits the next U.S. president. The return of Trump to the White House would be an environmental disaster. The coming U.S. election will be a singular event in the climate crisis. In the 12 years it took me to write The Deluge, my novel of the climate crisis, I watched as chaotic weather, record temperatures, and shocking political events outpace my imagination. The book depicts the human tipping point when the damage becomes irreversible and the foundation of our economy, our politics, and our world begin to crack. The plot of the points I was concocting in 2010 would become a constant drumbeat of headlines through 2024. The other major candidate in the race, President Biden, has been a steadfast proponent of that acceleration. I fully admit that Mr. Biden was not my first, nor even my seventh choice in the 2020 Democratic primary. Yet when it came to the immense challenge of confronting this crisis, I am forever grateful that he proved me wrong, delivering a game-changing victory with the narrowest of congressional margins, even as much of the rest of Mr. Biden's ambitious policy agenda got hacked away in Congress. One thing remained: reindustrialization through clean energy investment. This led to the passage of the History will folk end in a single day. Our window of opportunity for keeping the climate crisis from spiraling out of control could very well slam shut. global emission must peak this decade and begin a rapid decline for the world to have any chance of avoiding catastrophic warming. When I began writing my novel, we had something like 20 years to accomplish uh, that task. After the election, we'll have 62 months. My advice is to not tell yourself comforting bedtime stories about the political resiliency of the law when so many of its benefits lie in the years ahead. One can hold up a document like Project 2025 and shout from the rooftops just how extreme it is. One can attempt to use numbers to describe this danger, but everyone will fall short. And surely I've fallen short in describing just how frightening a second Trump presidency could actually be. Trump flips the script in his defense. His immunity argument is part of a pattern of shaping his own reality. Mr. Trump has also embraced a revisionist history of the January 6th, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, calling the rioters hostage. But in coming up with the argument, Mr. Trump used a tactic on which he has often leaned in his life as a businessman and a politician. He flipped the facts on their head in an effort to create a different reality. At the core of his immunity defense is a claim that seeks to upend the story told by federal prosecutors in an indictment charging him with plotting to overturn the 2020 election. In that indictment, prosecutors described a criminal conspiracy by Mr. Trump to subvert the election results and stay in power. In Mr. Trump's telling, however, those time events are official acts that he undertook as the president to safeguard the integrity of the race and cannot be subject to prosecution. But it is in the context of the immunity defense Mr. Trump's most audacious revision of reality have taken place. If a former president goes to prison, the Secret Service goes too. He would have to follow the probation officer's instruction and answer questions about his work and personal life until the term of probation ended. The trial in Manhattan, one of 4 criminal cases pending against Mr. Trump and possibly the only one that will go to jury before the election, centers on accusation that he falsified records to cover up a sex scandal involving a porn star. The former president is charged with 34 counts of felony, falsifying bidding record. If Mr. Trump is convicted, the judge in the case could sentence him to punishment ranging from probation to 4 years in state prison, though for the first-time offender of Mr. Trump's age, such a term would be extreme. If Mr. Trump is convicted but elected president again, he could not pardon himself because the prosecution was brought by New York State. Under normal circumstances, any sentence of 1 year or less, colloquially known as city time, would generally be served on New York City's notorious Rikers Island, home to the Department of Corrections' 7 jails. That's where Mr. Trump's former chief financial officer, Allen, 76, is currently serving his second 5-month sentence for crimes related to his work for his former boss. Modi appeared certain to win a third term. The decentralization of power had significantly undermined institutional checks and balance. Add cookie dough to a croissant. Bake and you'll have a cookie. Tourists and locals are flocking to taste the pastry. A planetary crisis awaits. History will fork, and in a single day, our window, our opportunity for keeping the climate crisis from spiraling out of control could slam shut. And yet the climate crisis is also the foundation on which we can build a more just, equitable, and prosperous world. Every election is precious. Every ballot we cast, a moral record of what we did in this crucial historical moment. Do not sit on your hands. Do not sit on your hands. Do not deny the stakes. Do not waste that vote. Tripling the world's nuclear energy capacity is a fantasy. The nuclear industry has a long history of failing to deliver on its promises. World leaders are not unaware of the nuclear industry's long history of failing to deliver on its promises, or of its weakening vital signs. Yet many continue to act as if a nuclear renaissance could be around the corner, even though nuclear energy's share of global electricity generation had fallen by almost half from its high of roughly 17% in 1996. There's a certain inevitability about the U.S. Energy Department's latest push for more nuclear energy. China and Russia are conspicuously absent from the list of signatories to the Dubai Pledge to triple nuclear power, although China signed the declaration in Brussels. What's missing? What's missing are leaders willing to buck their own powerful nuclear bureaucracies and choose paths that are far cheaper, less dangerous, and quicker to deploy. Without them, we are doomed to more promises and wasteful spending by nuclear proponents who have repeatedly shown that they can talk, but can't deliver. Channeling the look of the tech bro next door, Meta's chip has somehow become the kinder, gentler face of technology. A lo-fi project about hair's power. Each new week changed my mannerisms and my essence. Kay said. Is there a picture in the book that was particularly memorable for you? Ukraine aid in the light of history. It was also controversial when the U.S. helped Britain and China back in 1941. On Saturday, the U.S. House of Representatives finally overcame MAGA opposition and approved a new aid package for Ukraine. The Biden administration presumably had material ready to ship, just waiting for congressional